in the warm, sun-painted village of Den, where the scent of roasted plantains filled the air and the river shone like melted gold, lived a young woman named Amara, whose heart beat fiercely for a man named Django, a hunter admired throughout the region for his bravery, kindness, and the gentle smile that could calm even the most restless spirit. Amara believed her love for Django was destiny, a bond woven by ancient gods long before they were born. But her confidence began to crumble the day a beautiful traveler named Nyasha arrived in the village. Her voice soft as rain and her presence radiant enough to shift every pair of eyes, including Django's. Though Django's interactions with Nyasha were polite and distant, Amara's mind twisted every glance, every greeting, every shared word into betrayal, igniting a jealousy so intense it burned hotter than the afternoon sun. She convinced herself that Nyasha had come to steal her lover, and the more she imagined losing Django, the darker her thoughts grew, until her heart, a place once filled with warmth, turned into a storm of bitterness. Hearing whispers of old forest magic rumored to shape destiny, Amara sought out an isolated sorceress named Mama Kiro, a woman feared by all for her power to twist emotions into tools of ruin. Mama Kiro warned Amara that jealousy was a dangerous seed, one that could devour the soul of the one who planted it. But Amara's desperation drowned out every caution. She begged for a charm, a potion, anything that would bind Django to her and drive Nyasha far away. The sorceress' eyes, filled with ancient sorrow, handed her a small carved gourd containing a potion that would cause the truth to reveal itself, but she said nothing more. Amara, believing she finally found a way to secure her happiness, walked home with trembling excitement, unaware that the path she had just chosen would carve regret into her life more deeply than any wound of the flesh. That evening, as drumming echoed through the village and shadows stretched across the dusty ground, Amara hid behind a cluster of banana trees, clutching the carved gourd Mama Kiro had given her, her heart pounding like a restless drumbeat as she watched Django and Nyasha join a group of villagers around the fire. The atmosphere seemed innocent, just stories, laughter, and music, but her mind twisted every smile into betrayal, and in that moment she decided she could wait no longer. She would slip the potion into Django's calabash of palm wine and end her torment. When Django stepped away to fetch more firewood, Amara hurried forward, trembling as she uncorked the gourd and poured its shimmering liquid into his drink, unaware that Nyasha had quietly observed her from the shadows with a knowing but gentle gaze. When Django returned, he lifted the calabash to his lips, but before he could drink, Nyasha stepped forward and placed her hand on his wrist, her voice calm but firm as she asked him to stop. Confusion rippled through the villagers as she revealed that she was not a rival, but a healer traveling through villages to help restore harmony wherever jealousy, envy, or fear threatened to destroy love. She explained that she had sensed Amara's pain from the moment she arrived, and while she meant no harm, she knew the young woman's heart was clouded by fear. As murmurs spread among the villagers, the calabash in Django's hand began to glow, faintly a sign that the potion was awakening, and Nyasha quickly pulled away, urging everyone to step back. The liquid inside began to bubble, turning into a swirling silver mist that rose into the air and formed shapes, memories, emotions, and truths from Amara's heart, projected for all to see. Scenes of her insecurities, fears, and desperation flickered like fragments of shattered glass, revealing not betrayal from Django, but the battle within herself. Amara collapsed to the ground, trembling with shame as she realized the potion was never meant to manipulate love. It was meant to expose the darkness jealousy had planted in her. And though no one spoke harshly to her, the silence weighed heavier than scolding, leaving Amara with a sinking dread that her troubles had only just begun. When the last of the silver mist faded into the night, Amara felt as though her heart had shattered into pieces too small to gather. And though Django approached her with concern in his voice and gentleness in his touch, she could not bear to meet his eyes, convinced she had broken something she could never repair. The villagers dispersed slowly, murmuring among themselves, while Nyasha knelt beside Amara and explained that jealousy was not a sign of love, but of fear of losing something not yet fully understood, and that unless Amara confronted the roots of her insecurity, the darkness within her would continue to grow. Amara protested, insisting that all she had ever wanted was to keep Django close, to protect what they had, but Nyasha reminded her that love built on possession eventually collapses under its own weight. Django, hurt but patient, tried to reassure Amara that he had never desired anyone but her. Yet his attempt to comfort her only deepened her guilt, for she now saw how deeply she had doubted the one who had done nothing to deserve suspicion. Overwhelmed, Amara fled into the forest, her footsteps crunching through fallen leaves as she searched for a place where shame could not follow her. The deeper she ran, the thicker the trees grew, until the moonlight could no longer guide her, and the forest began to hum with the eerie chorus of unseen creatures. Suddenly the air thickened, and the trees around her shifted unnaturally as Mama Kiro appeared from the shadows, with eyes that reflected both disappointment and pity. The sorceress explained that Amara's actions had awakened an ancient force that fed on emotional turmoil, and by using the potion with a corrupted heart, she had drawn the attention of a spirit known as Cavalli, the shadow of doubt, an entity that whispered lies, magnified insecurities, and thrived in those who feared not the world but themselves. Now that the spirit had tasted her turmoil, it would follow her, haunt her dreams, and distort her reality until she reclaimed control of her heart. Amara begged Mama Kiro to help her banish the spirit, but the sorceress shook her head and said that only self-forgiveness and inner courage could weaken Cavalli. With those final words, Mama Kiro disappeared into the darkness, leaving Amara alone with the rising dread that she had summoned a torment she alone must face. The nights that followed were a torment Amara had never imagined, for every time she closed her eyes, Kivalian amalgamation of shifting shadows shaped like her own silhouette would slither into her dreams and whisper all the fears she had once tried to bury, telling her she was unworthy of love, destined to be abandoned, and doomed to break everything she touched. In the beginning, she tried to ignore the spirit, convincing herself it was merely a nightmare. But as the whispers grew louder and began bleeding into her waking hours, even sunlight felt tainted by a cold dread. She avoided the village, ashamed to face Django, living alone near the riverbank where she hoped the sound of flowing water might drown out the tormenting voice. Yet the river only mirrored her sorrow. One afternoon, as the sun set in a blaze of deep orange, Django found her sitting silently, with her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes vacant and tired. He approached cautiously, knowing she was fragile, and sat beside her without speaking, offering only presence and patience. Slowly, she leaned against him, confessing through tears how Kivali fed on every doubt she ever had, and how she felt trapped inside a prison made from her own emotions. Instead of responding with anger or disappointment, Django told her that he had his own fears, to fear of failing his family, of not being strong enough to protect the village, of losing the people he cared about, but he had learned that fear loses its power when spoken aloud rather than hidden. His words struck something deep within her, and for the first time since the ordeal began, she felt a flicker of warmth pushing back against the cold shadow inside her. Nyasha soon joined them, bringing herbs for cleansing and guiding Amara through a ritual of grounding, breath, and truth, reminding her that Kivali had no power of its own, only the power she surrendered to it. As the ritual progressed, Amara felt the shadow spirit clawing inside her chest, resisting her newfound strength. But with each breath of acceptance and each word of forgiveness she whispered to herself, the shadow grew weaker until it finally peeled away from her body, like smoke dissolving into the evening wind. And though it left behind an ache, it also left behind clarity, the realization that her greatest enemy had never been Nyasha, had been her own unhealed insecurities. In the weeks that followed her confrontation with the shadow spirit, Amara began slowly rebuilding the pieces of her life, returning to the village with a humbled heart and a new understanding of how deeply fear had shaped her decisions. And while some villagers still murmured about the night her jealousy exposed her, most welcomed her back with compassion, recognizing the courage it took to admit her faults. She apologized to Nyasha first, her voice trembling as she confessed every assumption, every suspicion, and every harsh emotion she had secretly harbored. But instead of anger, Nyasha responded with a serene smile, telling her that true healing begins the moment truth is spoken without excuses. When Amara apologized to Django, she expected rejection or resentment. Yet he took her hands gently and told her that love was not the absence of flaws, but the willingness to fight through them together. And hearing those words felt like receiving a second chance she believed she did not deserve. Still, even with forgiveness, Amara carried a weight of regret that reminded her daily of how close she had come to destroying not only her late relationship, but her own spirit. And she vowed never again to let fear make decisions for her. To atone for her mistakes, she began helping others in the village, mediating conflicts, assisting healers, and speaking with young couples about the dangers of letting jealousy grow unchecked. Over time, she transformed her greatest shame into a source of wisdom and strength, earning respect not through perfection but through honesty. Nyasha eventually continued her travels, blessing the village one last time before leaving, and Amara watched her go with gratitude instead of envy, understanding now that the traveler had come not to take something from her, but to teach her lessons she desperately needed. As the seasons passed and the village prospered, Amara found peace in the knowledge that regret had shaped her but no longer controlled her. And every time she looked at Django, his smile warm, his presence steady, she felt gratitude for the second chance life had granted her. And though the memory of her jealousy would never fully fade, it served as a reminder of how close she came to losing everything, pushing her to love more deeply, trust more sincerely, and live more wisely for the rest of her days.